I don't know about you, but this year has already been pretty tough on me. But art helps. So grab a pen and some paper or your art journal and take a few minutes to practice creative self-care with me. Well, friends, I was very disappointed when I was adding my links to the description with the link to purchase this particular art journal on Amazon because it appears it is no longer available in this size. And in searching since then, it looks like Sophie's Art Supplies isn't really a thing anymore. So this ideal art journal is no longer available. So I'm going to be trying out some other things, including this, which is kind of lovely. It has loose leaf pages, so it definitely lies flat. And you can take it out to work on them. Also, if you buy a 2-pack of the papers that fit in here, it costs about the same as buying the art journal itself with a paper. And I was thinking it would be fun to sort of bind these with something simple like yarn or even small metal rings, which would also be an option if you wanted to keep using the cover and do a sort of simple binding for this to keep, but keep using the journal. But in last week's description, I said I was ordering these to try, and I thought there was also a larger size and that I'd ordered a larger size, but this is what I have, and it is adorable. It has the right paper weight, so I thought, let's give it a try. I need scissors. It will be ideal for a travel art journal. This week my brain is still exhausted, so I'm falling back on one of my old favorites, my simple form of neurographic line making. So this does have the cover that's separate from the edge of the binding, which theoretically could help if we want to do collage in here. My bigger thing is whether it will help our pages open flat. The cover opens nice and flat, but with the rigid pages, I'm not so sure. So even with the first page, well, so like the thin cover page, well, it's open to a random spot in the middle. Not ideal. Especially if we're working with watercolor. This is kind of a large clip, but let's see. I wonder, well, clips could help. This one is, all right, so the big office clips are thick enough to clip from even the front, I'd say. Let's try our first page. Okay, well, not ideal. So if you're at a desk, this could work to keep things flat, or even not a desk. But who wants travel things you have to carry even extra things for? Right now, I'm going to relax my brain with some soft line making and then softening the pointy bits. This is a number 3. I will have a link to these in the description. There are numerous types of waterproof black pens on Amazon that go on sale at various times. Whoops. This is not the tip I want. Nor do I want the brush pen. There we go. The broadest of the ones that aren't chisel tips. 0.8. I'm going to give myself a border. One thing with the softening of the neurographic lines is sometimes with a finer tip than this, it looks kind of messy when I do it. And when I'm working in the 5.5 by 8.5, I typically use a Sharpie. Sharpie, I'm thinking, would be too big for this page. So some softly curving lines. If they'd never cross, that would be a problem. Let's revisit some of the types of lines I've used. We can hide some writing. There's my interesting M. E. L. You could draw some shapes. Rounded, of course. I find that I often add lines as I go after I start softening. So for the softening, there are sort of different ways to approach it. You can trace the entire inside of the shape and do your corners that way. Just go from corner to corner. And if you are going back over any of the lines, you may want to go over all of the lines. No rules, just do what works for you to take out the pointy parts, the jagged, and you will likely find that as you do so, it will help soften jagged, pointy bits you're feeling inside yourself. This is a good project, exercise, however you want to think of it, in which to find the flow I often mention, where all the noise from inside and outside quiets. I don't know about you, but sometimes that inner noise can get pretty loud and pretty negative. Today, turns out, is a rather achy day for my fingers, which cuts into the flow. And makes staying more precisely on my lines, well, not happening all the time, but that's okay because the variations in the weight of our lines is also interesting looking. And I am going to make my life and art making at the moment easier and get back more of the relaxation by adding one of my pencil grips to my pen. And try to lighten up my grip on my pen and the pressure with which I'm applying my lines. I have a bit of hypermobility in my knuckles. So you get the gist of what we're doing here. And if you've followed me for any length of time, you've seen different iterations of this. As mentioned, I've hidden words, actually worked with some type of shape or scene. But at the moment, I am going to hop ahead for you for another relaxing step. And again, I have neglected my typical introduction. And welcome. Welcome to Better with Art. I'm Melinda, and I'm here to encourage you to reclaim your creativity and practice creative self-care with weekly small art prompts that can be done in an art journal or on paper if you don't have one. This is one of the projects that can be done on lighter weight paper. But if you add watercolor later, which is one of the things I love to do with my neurographic art, you will need this heavier type of paper that was in the journals that I love. And this, it's 140 pound, 300 GSM watercolor paper. It was mixed media in the other, but you do need the heavier weight paper if you want to use wet layers. But also, if you're going to be using markers like this, pens with the felt tips, it needs to be hot pressed instead of cold pressed, which is harder to find than the cold press, which is one of the reasons I was saddened that the journal I'd found is no longer available, because it has ideal paper and it wasn't as expensive as many other art journals. Before I show you what I ended up doing with that neurographic line making, I wanted to show you what happens when you keep going bigger with your lines. I did end up trying a Sharpie in the new little journal and it worked fine. And here's what happens if you keep building up your line. At some point, you end up crossing over from working with lines to working with shapes. At one point, I checked the back of the page to see if any Sharpie was bleeding through. Even with the heavy coverage, I had absolutely no bleed through on this page. And now from one extreme to the other. You can end up making your lines so thick they're no longer just lines. Or, as in this case, I ended up adding lines that I didn't trace over in any way and just rather delicately dealt with the corners. It creates a completely different look from what was already there and absolutely totally different from when you end up with shapes. My original plan was to work with the shapes that I had created with my lines in a totally abstract, just colorful way. But when I looked at it, I saw a flower down in the bottom left-hand corner, and I had many leaf shapes. When I originally started doing the finer lines, they reminded me of branches, but because I was also turning the page around, they were going in different directions, but it still has that organic, planty look, if you will. So I had some fun pulling out shapes within the larger picture. It creates kind of a stained glass effect. But I also didn't want flat color, so I did a significant amount of blending. As I said earlier, and I always say, do what works for you. I did end up regretting the way I started the sky with so much orange, because I did intend to still use blue after I made the sort of sun-like circle, and I feel like there wasn't quite enough contrast between the orange and the pink flower. You will notice that I try to pull the color of the pink flower back with a white colored pencil to create more contrast. It didn't really make it whiter, but it did blend it interestingly. And I really love how it turned out. But yes, I would have liked more contrast. I'll link to some more of my neurographic art from earlier in Better with Art and from the 52-week art journal journey in the description. Also in the description, you can find links to some of the art supplies that I use, as well as a link to invite me into your inbox no more than once a week, and also receive a link to join the private Better with Art online community, private Facebook group, and a link to sign up to receive notifications when I have upcoming workshops online and in person. Whatever your week brings, take time to make some art for creative self-care. Taking time to make art is not a waste of time. We are wired for creativity, made in the image of the Creator. And when we aren't exercising our creativity in ways we find meaningful and enjoy, we can't be as healthy as we could be. I am living proof of the positive impact making art can have on mental health. That's why I am here on YouTube every week with another small, no pressure art prompt. Each prompt is meant to be something that can be done even if you have a few minutes, but also enjoyed if you have more. They are also designed so that if you have to step away, if you have 2 minutes today and 7 minutes day after tomorrow, you can walk away and pick up where you left off. I also try to use materials that are easy to acquire and as inexpensive as possible to encourage you to take time to make art for creative self-care, because we are better with art.